Hello, my friends. Hello. Welcome back. Welcome back to my channel. This is actually Future Crystal filming this clip to let you know that I started this vlog. I was vlogging every day for Vlogmas, and I started this around like day 4 or 5, so it didn't get too far. And then some things happened in my personal life that just kind of caused me to stop vlogging. So this vlog, I still want to use this footage. It kind of has an abrupt shift in that there's a break in between. So I'm going to be talking about a book that I'm currently reading, and then the last half, or the later part of this vlog, is going to be me reviewing 4 books and talking about some of my thoughts on the state of the romance community right now. So here is the opening clip that I originally started filming this vlog for, and I'll see y'all in later on.
Hark how the bows, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Christmas is here, bringing good cheer to young and old, meek and the bold. Ding dong, that is the song, with joyful ring, all caroling. One seems to hear words of good cheer from
Hello, my friends. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Vlogmas, another reading vlog. I don't really include a whole lot of personal stuff in here. A little bit of B-roll. I don't know. I just am mostly here to talk about books. I got some oatmeal I made for myself, and I just made the tea. So today's tea is actually one of my favorite flavors that I bought because it was in a calendar I had received previously. So it's Honeybush Pumpkin Chai. It's so good. It's a seasonal flavor, I think. I don't know if this one is one they have. Some of the seasonal flavors they have all year you can buy. I feel like this one is not. Maybe? I don't know. My cup is hot. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. This is probably like my favorite chai tea that is an herbal tea. I just love it. I think it's so good. It hits the right spice notes that I like. I like that it does give kind of like a pumpkin spice vibe, but I also just love how mellow this tea is specifically, without, like, it's not harsh or biting. Like, it just feels like the perfect blend of, I just love it. I just love it. I do. So let's talk about the books. I've been cleaning my house this morning and feeling productive in that way, and I sometimes struggle, maybe this is because I work from home, I sometimes struggle to focus and be productive if my house is a mess. So I did some house cleaning today, and while I've been doing that, the reason I'm telling you is because I was listening to an audiobook, and I did decide to go. If you watched last Vlogmas, you saw I mentioned I might go with Duchess material by Emily Sullivan. So I did decide to go with that. I bought the audio. I did receive an e-arc of this from Forever, but I did not get to it in time. So I went ahead and bought an audiobook. I used an Audible credit to get the audiobook because I still wanted to read it and get my review in. And if I don't get to my arc on time, I want to support the author, so I try to buy a book when it comes out. And I knew I wanted to listen to this on audio, so there we go. So Duchess material is brand new, just came out just last week, I think. And it is a Victorian historical romance, which is refreshing if you're used to Regency. And I love the Victorian time period. I love it. I love the way that it allows our heroines to have a little bit more agency and to have a little bit more of a worldview other than just being, and I love Regency too, but I like the dimension this adds to what our heroine can do in here. And inevitably with most Victorian historical romances, you do end up getting a big focus on blue stockings a lot of the time. And that's typically something that I can either work for me really well, or I can feel like it's hitting me over the head with it and it's hammering the point home, right? I don't like that at all. I have read some historical romances that feel they are overwhelmingly preachy without giving me enough story to go along with it, you know? I do love the whole concept of a blue stocking, though. So, Duchess material features our heroine Phoebe, who comes from a family of 3 sisters, and she's known for being a blue stocking, essentially. So she has foregone marriage in favor of accepting a job as a teacher at an all-girls school, which is filled with like working class girls. So she's very passionate about her job. She's very passionate about what she's doing. And I do think that it's fun to read a historical where the heroine has a job, because that's just something that you don't see very often, you know? So I really liked that. I liked how much she loved her job and what she did. And I also do like a heroine who's like, especially in a historical, who is like, I don't need a man. I don't want to get married, whether it's because she is recently widowed and she has, you know, financially set, or for whatever reason. I think it's very refreshing when the heroine is like, no, I don't need you. And I think that allows for a lot of opportunities for true change in her character when she inevitably falls in love. So I really like that. So our hero is Will, and he actually is her childhood best friend. Not necessarily her best friend. Sounds like it is her brother's best friend, right? Did I remember that correctly? Let me check. Yes, I believe so. So the blurb says it's his old friend's unconventional younger sister. So, and Phoebe, for her part, had feelings for him as a kid. Like, she had a crush on him, she was very into him, and then, you know, things happened and they grew apart. But the interesting thing about William is that he's now a duke. He sort of inadvertently inherited a dukedom, and he has been doing his darndest to live up to that title and to basically be a perfect member of the peerage. And he's very aware that now he has to marry, he has to find a perfect wife, and he's not looking forward to that. I do also really like that his character is so different in that way. Like, he isn't a rake. He isn't just born to privilege. Like, this is something he inherited, and he feels within himself that he needs to rise up to it. And I think that's interesting, and I really like his character a lot too. So the plot happens when one of our heroine's students goes missing, and she enlists William's help to help her find him, because who better to help this blue stocking woman find somebody than a very powerful duke, right? That's what she thinks. So she uses those childhood connections. And it's so cute and so fun to see that the two of them still have a spark, that even though it was like in childhood, and it was like I don't think it was childhood. Oh, timer's always going off. I don't think it was necessarily childhood, but like teenage years, like they, you know, she had a crush on him. So I do love few things more than a childhood sweethearts to lovers romance. Like, that's just one of my favorite things. I love it so much. So I am liking that. This has plenty of mystery in the book. It has plenty of steam in here, if that's something that's important to you. I will say that at times it feels a bit misplaced to me. I do feel like there are moments in here where the steam feels like it was clickbaity in a way. That's not entirely the right term, but it feels like it was put in there for sound bites, for reviews, to draw in spicy romance readers, right? And I can very clearly see that's what's happening. And I don't feel like that's necessarily a bad thing. I just wish some of that had been handled a little more carefully, and it hadn't, because the thing that I find frustrating about that specifically in this historical, and I don't want to like fault them, because, you know, historical romance isn't publishing as often. I've talked about that here before. And so I do see that, hey, this is still a new historical romance that's been published. And I can't necessarily fault her, or whoever was responsible for it, for wanting to draw in the spicy book talk crowd, right? But at the same time, I feel annoyed with that, and I feel annoyed, I guess, sums it up pretty quickly, because to me that is doing what every other book that is hoping to get to be TikTok's next love child. You know, I feel like that happens in so many romances, that they're hoping that this is, if they put this spicy scene in here, if they word it just right, this is the one that's going to get picked up and this is going to shoot them into stardom. And again, I can't say that I blame them, but as just a reader, when I'm looking at it from a creator or a career standpoint, or even just a business wanting to make money, I understand that. I do. But as a reader, in my eyes, I see I see what you're doing, and I don't like it. I find it annoying. It feels a little shoehorned in. So there were a couple of scenes like that. And not that they're like over the top scenes, but they just very much felt like this is in here you know what I mean? Like, I've talked about this before, where it's in there to provide fodder for TikToks, right? And maybe it is because of the recent discourse about book talk's influence on romance publishing, but I definitely felt very aware of that when I was reading this, and it just annoyed me. It annoyed me. And so because I have that, like, in the back of my mind, it kind of has given me a bad taste in my mouth for the rest of the book. And so inevitably when that happens, I start seeing other flaws, you know? But that's definitely not like a huge flaw. This book does have a lot going on, and I feel like not everything is balanced, right? So sometimes the mystery takes over, sometimes the romance does, but I don't necessarily feel the romance building in a believable way. And this is another case of a book that had that potential in the beginning. They had great interaction. The hero is giving kind of Mr. Thornton vibes from, kind of, like, don't take me at my word on that. Like, that's who he reminds me of, like, reminiscent. Like, the LaCroix version, just a hint of Mr. Thornton from the BBC North and South. Because he is a little bit stern, but he's not that cold, you know? So yeah, I just don't feel like the balance in here is right for me. Sometimes there's spice, sometimes there's romantic scenes, but the build-up showing us the falling in love, I feel like is taking a backseat to these other elements that I believe are in there to get readers interested and to feel like they're hooked, but to me it's having the opposite effect, and I'm kind of checking out because I don't feel invested enough in the romance to continue reading, and the mystery is a very ancillary point for me that I'm just not super interested in. So I am finishing this because I used an Audible credit, and I very rarely, unless a book really just is terrible, I very rarely will DNF Audible credit books because they're expensive, you know, they're expensive. So I'm finishing it. I only have like an hour left of the audiobook, and I'm really hopeful that something in the end wins me over, because right now this feels like a very meh. It's fine. It's fine. It has the potential to be great, and I do see how people could like it, but for me, it's just kind of falling short a little bit. And, you know, again, this kind of makes me feel like the whole conversation about historical romance is dying. I don't believe that it is, but, you know, historical romance is still being published. I feel like my personal complaint is that the great authors that I love, a lot of them are no longer writing historical romance. Lisa Kleypas, Beverly Jenkins, Sarah MacLean. Sarah MacLean says she is going to come back to it. She's doing a contemporary fiction next year. And I hope with all my heart that she is, because I love Sarah MacLean. And Tessa Dare, right? So that's four big authors who write beautiful, emotional, impactful historical romances. They're not writing anymore. For whatever reason with Lisa Kleypas, you know, I don't know the ins and outs of Sarah MacLean's. I do feel like probably this request from publishers to not publish historical romance has something to do with it. And I do know that Beverly Jenkins, you know, I was on a Zoom call with her, with Monica from Pardon This Book Addict, and she said that her contract wasn't renewed with Avon for historical romance, so she had to pivot. She was talking about doing a fantasy romance, and, you know, she also does her contemporaries and things like that. So, and Tessa Dare, I don't even know what's going on with her. Does anybody know what's going on with her? I haven't heard from her. I haven't heard a peep. And It's just tragic to me. It's tragic because those are the historical romance greats, some of them. Like, we still have Lorraine Heath. We still do have greats. Julianne Long, hopefully. Gosh, I freaking hope she still is under contract. She just had a book come out. Lorraine Heath has a book coming out in December. Mary Bellog is still publishing. So there are still wonderful authors who are publishing. It's just, I worry that the change in romance publishing is going to create an atmosphere of writing similarly to how this book is, which feels like it's written to trend. It does feel like it's written to trend. It does feel like it's written for TikTok. And the elements of what made the Lisa Kleypas, the Beverly Jenkins, the Sarah McLean really so beautiful and impactful for me are missing in this book, you know? Maybe I'm thinking too much about it. This is one book. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I very well could be. I very well could be. Anyway, I'm gonna finish this book. I probably won't update you all until tomorrow when I have another tea tasting and I'll review this book and tell you what I picked up next. But that's your update for today. Happy December 5th. Thank you so much for being here and watching Vlogmas. I love y'all.
Up over Mars, you trim a tree, I put up a star. I'll wear a sweater, it's down to my knees, and you will kiss the freckles on both of my cheeks, and we will sing our own Christmas song. Snow in the sky, you sing so softly, yeah, only we hear about the love you promised for all of our years, and we will sing our own Christmas song.
Hello, my friends. Okay, so some time has passed since that last clip. Some time has definitely passed. And I am here to wrap up this vlog to talk about my final thoughts on the book that I was reading, and also to give you some thoughts about another 3 books that I read after that. So we're going to be talking about 4 books in here. So let's discuss Duchess material, okay? So Duchess material, honestly, I feel slightly disappointed by every single book that I'm going to be talking about here in some way or another. None of these books were bangers for me. None of them were completely 5. None of them were 5 stars. Most of them were not even close, and one of them was super disappointing. So let's talk about Duchess material. So this book had such a good premise, and I was really, really excited. I liked the Victorian time period. You know, I talked about everything that I was liking in the book. And then I kind of just was hoping that once we reached a certain point in the book that we would stop really setting up the story and things would start advancing with our characters and their romantic relationship, and things would start advancing in the plot. And I feel like what happened here instead is that it feels a bit disjointed. And I think that can happen anytime that you try. Personally, I feel like this can happen anytime you try to combine 2 genres or have 2 focuses, right? Like, I think this can happen in fantasy romance for sure. I think that's where we see it a lot, but it can happen in just about anything like romantic suspense or anything that has romance and then some other plot that's happening there too, right? I feel like it can be very difficult for that author to streamline both of those and give you a satisfying, compelling story arc for both of those simultaneously without leaning one way or the other. And typically, because I'm there first for the romance, I want the romance to be forward instead of the plot. That's not even necessarily what happened here. I do feel like what happened in this book for me, what made this really weak, I ended up giving it 3 stars, if I didn't say that already, is just that I feel like she was trying to do too much, and therefore none of it was getting the attention or the care or the nuance that it really deserved. And so for example, like we have the romance in here, which should be the shining star of the show, which I was really, really looking forward to. And then it just kind of quickly ended up becoming something that didn't feel fully explored. Like the depth of the romance wasn't there. We start off the relationship with a physical intimacy, and then it seemed like we were just kind of playing catch up throughout the rest of the book to try and get their emotions to catch up with what they'd already experienced physically. And I just didn't feel like that really worked for me. You know, I don't feel like that worked for me. I actually did like the third act conflict in this book. I felt like it was a very unique way to resolve it, and I liked the conversation that was happening there. But yeah, overall, I just feel like this book wasn't for me. It felt disappointing in a lot of ways, and mostly the romance. And again, so keep in mind that this romance starts with intimacy first, right? Which is not uncommon necessarily in historical romances, because you have so many like marriages of convenience and things like that, that is often the way that you enter in, with them starting to have feelings for one another. But it is becoming something that I am just very, very tired of. It's something that happens a lot, and it's something that I think can often not be developed enough, right? I think something, and this is going to go into my conversation about romance as a whole, is that I think largely what is happening with currently published romance books. Now, keep in mind, oh shoot. I'm sorry, I keep getting cut off. I am unfortunately going to have to run, and I'll come back and film more on this vlog in just a bit. But I do want to do the tea tasting because I've got it made before I run out the door. So today's, which is actually December 11th, it is elderberry wine, which I'm excited about. So this one is hibiscus, rose hips, elderberry, echinacea, apple pieces, lemongrass, raspberries, blue cornflowers, no caffeine. Honestly, I opened this and it smelled like horse feed. It smells like a little bit like hay, a little bit sweet, so. It tastes a little bit like, it does taste a little bit like hay, but I don't hate it. I don't hate it. So, yeah. That's it. It's good. It's good. I like it. I actually really do like it a lot. I can't remember if I've had this flavor before or not. Anyway, my friends, I'm sorry this vlog is kind of a convoluted mess, disjointed mess is probably more accurate, but I will come back because I also want to review this book. Forever did send me a finished copy. I finished it, I want to review it for you, and then the other book that I'm going to review for you, the other two are going to be, oh my goodness sakes, I just had my app open and then I got that phone call. So let's see, apologies. I appreciate y'all for being here and for being like patient and everything because, okay. So I'm going to come back and review No Ordinary Duchess by Elizabeth Hoyt, and then I'm also going to review The Stranger I Wed by Harper St. George. And then the final book I'm going to review in here is Beyond Scandal and Desire. So I've read all three of those. We're going to talk about those in a minute. But yeah, overall, felt very disappointed in Duchess material. I've only read one other book by this author before, and I really did enjoy it. I feel like she did a great job with setting up the romance, and it felt very swoony and romantic and realistic and believable. But this one just felt like she was putting too much in there. For the first time, I will say something about Duchess material. For the first time, this is the first book that I have read that is traditionally published historical romance that feels like it was written to tropes to follow the TikTok trend. And I can sniff those out a mile away, I feel like. And it's tough because I understand why authors do that, right? I understand why they want to have those very marketable tropes to get those audiences on, and I don't want historical romance to not succeed, but at the same time, it feels very obvious. It feels very obvious, and I just don't love it. So that book was disappointing. It wasn't for me. It might be for you. It wasn't terrible by any means, but it just was very average. 3 stars. Okay, I will come back to review those 3 books. I'll see y'all in a bit. Hello, my friends. Hello, my friends. Okay, we're back. We're gonna finish this vlog. We're gonna finish this vlog. So let's talk about The Stranger I Wed by Harper St. George. So I am a huge fan of Harper St. George. I have really enjoyed pretty much all of her books that I have read, with the exception of the first book in her previous series, The Gilded Heiresses, whatever that one is. I can't even remember what it's called. I didn't love that one. That one was just okay for me. I think I gave it 3 stars. And that's how I felt about this one too. Like, there's nothing huge that I want to complain about in this book, but overall, I didn't super enjoy it, and it definitely kind of missed the mark for me in a lot of ways. And honestly, the premise of this sounds super good, but again, this is another book that I feel like it has too many elements going on, and I don't particularly feel like the balance was right on this one. So in this book, we have Cora. Her and her sister, their parentage, their legitimacy has always been questioned, and so they're not exactly part of the circle set. Like, they're not exactly accepted because their legitimacy has always been in question. So pretty soon her grandmother dies and leaves a fortune to these girls, but the only way that they get to have it is if they marry a suitable husband and they leave America. And so that's totally fine with Cora. She wants to go to England. She thinks it's going to be a good adventure. And she definitely has like some societal things that she wants to improve upon. She's really working to make things right for women, and that's a big emphasis for her character arc and her storyline. So she ends up meeting the Earl of Devonshire, who is actually himself a member of Parliament, and he also has some social justice causes that he is working on. He's very passionate about. They're very important to him, so they do kind of have a connection in that way, which I really did like. And Cora, for her part, she is entering this marriage, and she kind of makes it known right off the bat that, like, look, I will marry you because he needs her money, right? I will marry you, but I want to be able to divorce you too, which obviously we know is going to be a hard thing for him because he is an earl. Like, it's not going to be easy for her to get a divorce. So he agrees on that and says that worst case scenario, after 5 years, she will give him an heir, and she agrees to that because that's something that he desperately needs, is an heir. So my problem with this book, like, it's not a huge problem, but I do feel like I just had a string of books that were very subpar from authors that I have previously read and loved, that I do feel like these authors are attempting to do too much messaging, too much work with their backstories, and for that reason the romance is really taking a back seat. And I did really like I really liked specifically that the hero is a member of Parliament and he has these social justice issues that he's working on. He really wants to move forward. I liked that a lot because I feel like we often see that with the heroine, and then the hero kind of comes on board with her idea. So I liked that from the get-go he had his own things that he was working on. The heroine, for her part, is keeping some secrets from him, so that's another element of the story that gets unraveled layer by layer. But once again, as similarly to Duchess material, this whole book begins with their physical intimacy taking first, right? And again, that's something that we're very familiar with in historical romance. That's very common for it to happen. But the fact that the 3 historicals that I'm talking about right now, that's how they began, and the romance came second, just got to be too much for me. And that's something that I just sort of feel like it's becoming a little bit tired for me. I don't particularly love seeing that develop first. Like, why can't we have them enter into an arranged marriage more often, and they wait for that until something happens where they just can't wait to be together physically? I feel like that's something in general that is severely, severely lacking with currently published romance novels, whether they be indie or whether they be traditional. I feel like it doesn't even matter how much steam is on the page, it's the way that it is handled in the book. And in this case, we had our first steamy scene, but they don't really have any connection, so that's the thing then that is propelling them through their romance, which is fine. But I personally always find that a little bit hard. Like, if that's going to happen, the romance has to be particularly swoony, because you cannot convince me that when these two have had physical intimacy together, that then they also fall in love, and that's not just a fact of the matter that it was just a really great night or really great several nights. Like, I want to see more depth to the relationship other than what is happening in the bedroom. I'm not saying anything negative about that, right? I feel like this is a very sensitive area right now, specifically with authors who are coming for readers who have any critiques or criticisms about the amount or the level or how the steam is in the book, right? But I just sort of feel like this is the thing that authors are going for. I've been talking about this for years on this channel, probably since like 2021 on my Instagram. I talk about it all the time. I am so tired of lust-forward, physically driven romances. It doesn't always have to be that way, and I feel like that's what's happening time and time again. And even if there are other elements to the story, if that is taking the front stage, I just find myself to be continuously bored and uninterested, and I don't feel like we're getting the tension. I don't feel like we're getting the longing or the yearning. We're not getting that feeling of anticipation of, I need these two to be together, because they're already together, And at that point, their relationship has to develop in other ways. So I'm just very tired of this. I'm very, very tired of this. And that specifically is what happened here. They have a lot of moments of physical intimacy before they ever start to really catch feelings for each other. And I just had a hard time really caring about them after that. So again, this may be something that works for you all the time. This may be something that you aren't as tired of as I am, but I am so freaking tired of it. And the fact that I had 2 traditionally published historical romances, 3, we're getting to that in a minute, that were published in 2024, this was in them, right? There haven't been a ton of traditionally published historical romances, at least not that I have read, but I will tell you for sure the ones that I have loved don't lead with this. As the, I'm thinking about the historical romances that I have absolutely loved this year. The Courtney Milan, The Marquis Who Mustn't, Julie Ann Long, both of her books. Both of those books have such great chemistry in there, and they have such a great connection. And there's this feeling of, oh my gosh, these two, like, they have so much chemistry. I need them to be together. I need them to be together so badly. When are they going to get together? And that is a rare thing that's happening in romance books lately. I feel like they're getting together too early. There's a ton of fodder for TikToks or marketing material to get spicy readers to want to read this, but I'm just so sick and tired of it. I'm so sick and tired of it. So this book is not poorly written. This book has a lot to say, but the romance in here was definitely the weakest part, and it was super uninteresting to me. So 3 stars because I really like and admire this author's writing, but this book in general was just an overall miss for me. It was painfully tedious to read. I couldn't wait for it to be done. So moving on. So those 2, I gave 3 stars, but I still had so many issues with them, and honestly, I'm kind of wondering, do I really even want to give them 3 stars? Are they actually 2 stars? Because I feel like I'm in this phase where I kind of want to be a little more harsh, because what did I actually enjoy about them? Not much. So even though I feel like I gave these books 3 stars, I feel like they're probably more realistically 2 stars, because I was so overwhelmingly bored and uninterested in them. There wasn't any real driving force for why I felt like these 2 needed to be together. I don't want to read a romance where they just are together or where they finally realize that they want to be together. I want to read romances where they are dying to be together, where they think they're going to perish if they cannot touch hands, kiss, be together, just be near each other. Like, I want Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas, which I talked about in a previous video. I reread it. It's one of my favorite books. I've read it several times. I want that level of I must be around her. I must be around her so often. I have to keep her glasses with me because I need her by me. Why can't we have more of that in romance books? I feel like that element is not happening. So I'm changing my rating from these as I am talking to you about them to 2 stars, because while they weren't terrible, they were not great, not even close to great. And a lot of times what separates a 2-star from a 3-star for me personally is the amount of irritation that I feel when reading it. So even as I'm talking about these, I just feel so irritated with them because the romance just did not deliver at all. I was so bored. I was so bored with these books. Okay, moving along. Now this book, I did actually give 2 stars, and I'm going to stand by it, and it is by one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Hoyt, No Ordinary Duchess by Elizabeth Hoyt. I have been anticipating this book for so much. If you've been following me for a while, I haven't talked about her recently because I read her Maiden Lane series years ago, made a whole video ranking them, talking about them, reviewing them. I've loved her other series. I've read almost her entire backlist. I love this author so much. I was so hyped and excited for this book, and it honestly was so severely disappointing to me. Okay, so in this book we have our heroine, who is part of this group of wise women who are seen as witches by the people in the town, although they aren't technically witches. And she has a lot of a different upbringing in her life. She's got some secrets as well. And so she's trying to find this book that she thinks is going to help the wise women. She desperately needs to find it. So she's going to the Grey Court's home and looking through their library, and that's where she meets our hero, Julian, who is heir to the dukedom. So Julian finds her in the library, and he's immediately sort of like, what's she doing in here? I don't know, she needs to get out of here. But he remains like intrigued with her, and then they have this like continuous circle where they're kind of circling around each other, getting intrigued with each other, but never getting too close, right? So they don't even get really together in this book until maybe like 60 or 65% of the way through. And at that point, it is definitely a physical first way they get together, because up to that point, he's intrigued with her, but the reason he's intrigued with her is because he is a submissive man in the bedroom, and he feels like she brings out these desires in him that he wants to fulfill with her. So that's his entire focus, is the way that he wants her to dominate him, basically. And for her part, she, on the other hand, sees a lot of things that are good about him, and she sees a lot of things that she admires about him. Whereas from his point of view, there is a specific scene in here where he's like, she's not really that pretty. She's bigger than other girls. Why am I so drawn to her? I don't know, but I just am. And I can't tell you of anything that I dislike more. Well, there are some things, but that's up there of things I dislike so much about romance books. And that is when the hero is like, she's really not that pretty. I don't know why I want her so much, but I just do. Like, I don't want to hear about a hero talking about the heroine like that, right? It doesn't matter if she's the most beautiful woman in the world. I want her to be the most beautiful woman to you, man. So I didn't really like at all the way this relationship was moved forward. I didn't feel like this was necessarily super steamy, but the emphasis on why he wanted to be with her was steamy and physically driven, and I just didn't care. And I also felt like the background plot in here was a little convoluted. Julian has his mysteries and secrets and things he's trying to figure out, and she has hers. And sometimes they would coincide together. I mean, I don't know. I was disappointed, hugely disappointed in this book. I think that Elizabeth Hoyt is an author who, sorry, I have a hair in my mouth and it's driving me crazy. She is one of those authors who historically has been able to manage plot and romance together so well, making it such a convincing reading experience that this plot is integral to these characters and these characters are falling in love along the way. And I just didn't get any of that. I didn't feel like this couple was in love at all. They did have some moments together, but I didn't even care because there was no emotion behind it, and I'm just really sick and tired of reading books that are purely physical first and very little emotion. And when they finally do have emotion, it's towards the end of the book and we get this much. And I just sort of feel like this is a trend that I have been seeing for a long time, and it is interesting to see this front and center in traditionally published books and historical, no less. And that's not to say that they are overly steamy or they have too many steamy scenes. That's not what I'm saying. But the driving force of all three of those is their physical relationship. That's why they want to be together, and that takes up the majority of the book, leaving very little room for any emotional development. And before you come at me, if you're watching this and you're not a loyal subscriber to me, before you come at me and say, well, emotional development can happen in there, that's true. That's true. But did it really actually happen here? Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But also, that's not my preference. I don't want to see characters always doing that and then they fall in love because they're together physically. I just hate that. I'm so tired of it. So that's 3 historical romances published in 2024, this year, that had that emphasis, and I'm tired of it, and they were all 2-star reads. I didn't like them at all. So when we talk about the state of historical romance and how it's kind of not being published, and then you think about someone who reads and loves the genre like myself and has for years, these books feel like they are catered and written towards the audience that is piping up spicy books on Book Talk. This is not typically any of these really typically fall deeply in line with what I think a traditional, maybe not even traditional, what someone who loves historical romance is going to really love to read. I don't think so. I could be wrong. That's just me. That's just my opinion. You don't need to come for me if you disagree. I feel like I've been getting a lot of heat on the internets these days for my opinion, which is not a new opinion, on the state of steam in romance books, and not the amount, not that it's there, but the way that it is the entire focus of the romance. I'm just freaking tired of it. I am freaking tired of it. I want yearning. I want these couples to need to be together. I want to feel that need. I want to feel that uncomfortableness, that yearning, that desire. we don't feel like that because they get it like right away. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. Now that brings me to the last book that I want to recommend. I'm not recommending it. These are not recommendations. But I did actually finally read Beyond Scandal and Desire. So this one was actually a book that was for my Fable book club in November that I didn't get to, and because I had read 3 historical romances that were deeply disappointing to me personally, I wanted to go with an author that I knew I loved and enjoyed, and so I went with Lorraine Heath, who I do really enjoy her books, and I did want to get to this book last month. I just didn't have time. My mood was kind of all over the place, and when it came down to it, when I had time to read freely that wasn't like assigned reading, I just didn't feel like reading this book. So I did, however, now feel like reading it. So this one was better. This one I gave 3 stars. I really did like the buildup of this. I did like the buildup of the romance. I felt like it was really good. Now in this one we do have a heroine who is very young and very naive. She is engaged to be married to her childhood friend who she really loves and cares for, and she believes that he is essentially like the man for her. You know, she thinks her future is set. But there are some series of events that happen that lead her to believe that maybe he isn't. Maybe he isn't who she wants to end up with. Maybe he doesn't care for her the way that she wants him to, and she just feels disillusioned with that. Now, our hero actually opens the book. He is an illegitimate son to the Duke, and he therefore was sent to live away from his father and raised by someone who was poor. So he is now a self-made man. He's made a life for himself. He's made a name for himself. He has money, and he wants to bring down the Duke's actual son that he claimed as his heir. And who is that guy? It is the guy who is engaged to our heroine. So again, this is a really great plot by Lorraine Heath. I think she did her characters really well. I think she did the romance really well. I really feel like this book in general was just a very fun reading experience. The plot was tight. The writing was clever. The characters were really well fleshed out. I also really liked, you know, our heroine, she is a young heroine, and one of the things that makes her start to realize that she doesn't want to be with her fiancé is the fact that he doesn't seem to really be interested in her or desire her at all, whereas our hero does desire our heroine, and she really feels that and leans into that. And I think that that's such a powerful thing for a woman, a young woman, any woman really, to feel desired by a man, that it can be very, very compelling to follow after that man and sort of give your heart to him, even if he doesn't want your heart, he just wants you physically. And that's another reason why I kind of get frustrated with romances that are like this, because there are far too many men out there who act like they want the woman's heart and body when really all they want is her body, right? But that's a conversation for another day. So our heroine finally decides that she doesn't want to be with him anymore, and then she starts pursuing a relationship with our hero. Secrets are revealed, there's a big twist at the end. This was just very fun, really clever, really great, really enjoyed it. And again, like, this one did have a big emphasis on their physical relationship really driving the romance in here, but I do feel like it worked in this book because that was something that she was lacking in her relationship with her fiancé. So when she meets the hero and he just desires her, and it's so clear how much he desires her, that's another reason that made this like a 4-star, is that the way that he desires her and wants her, you get to feel that for a long portion of the book. It's not just suddenly they're together, you know, like, I really liked it. So I gave this one 4 stars. Really enjoyed it, had a great time reading this one. So there you have it, my friends. Those are my thoughts on the books that I read. Thank you so much for watching this crazy chaotic vlog. I appreciate y'all so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video, my friends. And if you have made it this far, please feel free to leave me any type of Christmas emoji because it's almost Christmas time, y'all. I do have at least one more vlog coming, or one more Vlogmas episode where I'm going to be tasting tea and things like that, at least one. Hopefully I'll have more, but no promises because, man, life is hitting hard and hitting fast, and I'm just doing my best to keep my head above water. But I thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate every single one of you. Special shout out to my patrons who are always there to love and support me. I thank you so much. Their names are at right before the credits of this video. I appreciate all of them, and I will see you all in my next video.